Looks like it's being
John, welcome
recorded.
to the classroom. And now we're being recorded, and I will turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you very much, Harry, and welcome to the class. I'm going to spend the first couple of minutes here kind of just going over some basics of who I am and what got me here. And then we'll get into this whole concept of understanding the college funding process. Um, I am a college funding specialist on top of being a certified financial planner professional. I thoroughly enjoy the work that I do. I get to meet with lots of young people and help them go through not only the college financial aid process, but helping them find the right school for the right reasons, helping them with applications and essays. And it keeps me young because I get to spend so much time with the next generation. And I'm very blessed with that. And I think it's a very important service to be able to provide. Um, I'm going to just dive right into this. Uh, let's start with how I got here, and that'll help to explain why it is that I do college funding as a profession. Um, my my route started in 1978 at Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. It's a beautiful school, as you can see from the pictures. It was a gorgeous campus, a great time. It's about 2,500 students on campus. So it's a pretty small school. And not only did I learn the academics and some of the social stuff that comes along with being in college, but also I learned fundamental skills in how to process large amounts of information, distill it, analyze it, and present it. And those are all tools that I use even today as a certified financial planner professional. So I'm very appreciative of the 4 years I got to spend at Middlebury College. And I think it's a really important thing for every young person to have an opportunity to at least explore is that 4-year higher education process. Unfortunately, it's not the least expensive process as well, and we'll get into that in a moment. After Middlebury College, I spent a number of years, 12 years in radio broadcasting, putting that Middlebury College expensive education to good use. I'm sure my parents were thrilled with that part, spending 12 years in radio, which is not the most high paying of jobs. But I did get to learn how to communicate even better. I get to the point now where I actually prefer to be in front of a large group of people as opposed to doing one-on-one, although one-on-one is not a problem for me either. But I'm one of those rare birds that really thrives off of a room full of energy. Since my radio broadcasting years ended in 1990, I've been a business owner, business coach, financial planner, and more recently, a college funding specialist. I've been a certified financial planner now for about 10 years, just about 10-year mark right later this year. But the big question that was going through my mind as my kids started growing up is the same question that's going through every one of your potential clients' mind, and that is, how am I going to pay for my kids' college education? Now, this is a question that starts when the kids are born, and then you kind of stuff it for a number of years unless you happen to be really proactive and very planning and strategically oriented, which most people are not. And so they don't really think about it until their kids get into high school. And then the kids being in high school, they start realizing, college isn't that far off, and they're getting run old pretty quickly on me, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to make this all work out. So that's the big question that's going on in their minds is, how am I going to pay for all of this? And that is the fundamental question. It's probably one of the biggest questions that they have financially. When you think about it, they have this huge amount of money they put into their home. And second to that is going to be the college education for their kids. And it is a huge amount of money. So this is a very important space. And this is a question that whether they ask it of you when you first meet somebody as a financial planner or not, is an important question that's going on in their minds. And before I get into the guts of the financial planning process with regards to college funding, there are a couple of housekeeping rules. Number one is to play at a level 10. I know it's a little harder to do that when you're in your space and I'm here and I can't see you. It works really well when I'm in a room with people and I tell them to play at a level 10 because I feed off of the energy that's in the room. But I can still feed off of some of the energy that's going on from each of you. So I just ask you to play at a level 10. Science has proven that people learn more, they learn it faster, and they retain it longer the more engaged they are in the learning process. So, if you feel like you have a question, send me a chat. Stay engaged in this as much as possible because it is important information, and the more focused on it you are, the better off you will be as far as being able to pick up on this information and retain it for future use. The other rule is to jot down your questions because you're going to have questions, and I will do my best. I've slotted extra time after this, my presentation, to answer your questions. It's a complicated process, a very complicated process, and I know you're going to have questions. This here is a picture of the Department of Education's simplified view of the financial aid delivery process. This is their simplified view. This is not the complicated view. If you saw that one, it would be really a rat's nest. And proof positive that bureaucrats do have a sense of humor. The Department of Education does refer to this internally as the Department of Education hairball, the DOE hairball. And you can see how complicated the process is. So I know you're going to have questions. When you get to the point where you have clients, they're going to have questions, and you need to be able to answer them slowly, methodically. And interestingly enough, as complicated as this process looks in this schematic, there just really are some real basic stuff that people need to know. But the other piece of this is that most of them don't, and what they do know is probably wrong, because there really are two sets of rules to the college funding game. They're the rules that everybody plays by, they think are the real rules of the game. All their friends know it, all their other families who have, kids in the same grade as they do. Everybody knows what supposedly goes on in the college funding world. And yet what they really know is nothing compared to the way the real game is played. The real rules of the game are played by the folks who are the colleges and universities, as well as the state and federal funding sources. They operate on a totally different set of rules. And we'll try to get into those so that you understand the difference. And then there's one last tip for you to get more, one last housekeeping tip. And this is sort of a general suggestion I have for anybody who wants to be a financial planner. And it's the oath that I take every day. When I first got in this business 10 years ago, it was a lot more difficult for me because of one piece that's coming up in a moment. But here's the quote, and you can read along with me. Play at a level 10 if you'd like. I solemnly swear that if I know something that is helpful or useful to my friends, family, and neighbors, we can insert clients into there as well, that I will insist on sharing that information with them. That's all. I mean, that's what we do as planners. We have stuff that we know that they don't. And the challenge is getting them to accept the fact that we know something that they don't, and to actually have them listen to us as planners. But here's the key, and here's where the major challenge is. It's even if they are not completely ready to hear it. And in most cases, and especially when it comes to the college funding game, a lot of people are not ready to hear what you may have to tell them. And yet I go out there, this is the slide pack I use for the retail presentation. And I tell people this, you are going to run into people who believe that they know exactly how the college funding process works. And you're going to know something different than they do because you've been through this presentation. And because you know something different, there's going to be conflict there because then they're going to think that they're wrong. They're not wrong, they're just playing by a different set of rules. And when they like to know, and when you want your clients to know, the real rules of the college funding game. So that's what we're going to get into. There are a lot of challenges in college funding. Number one is the cost. It's expensive to send your kids to school. Average state university costs $20,000 per year. $20,000 per year. And understand that many state universities now run on 5- and 6-year programs. That equates, by the way, $20,000 a year to a brand new Kia for the student each year that they're in school. That's a lot of money. Even for folks who make $100,000, $125,000, $150,000 a year, even for folks who make $250,000 a year, $20,000 is a sizable part of their annual income. And they have to think about that. It takes some extra effort. And then if you're talking about the average private university, that's even more expensive. It costs $40,000 per year or more. Many of the private universities are well over $50,000 per year in cost of attendance. That's the equivalent of a brand new Lexus for the student each and every year that they're in school. So not only is cost a major challenge, but there are other ones as well. The biggest one, most important one of them, is that it's a complicated process. And also college costs are going up 8% per year. And they've been going up 8% per year for a long, long time. Here in California, the state university system just increased cost of attendance and tuition by almost 18% this last year, after a 15% increase the prior year. So college costs are getting much more expensive. So those numbers are doing nothing but going up rapidly. And the college funding process is complicated. There are, as I said, two sets of rules. They're the rules that everybody's playing by, and then they're the rules, the real rules of the game that are being played by the colleges and the universities and the state and federal funding sources. And here's a statistic that at the retail side of things anyway, people need to understand. 56% of college freshmen don't make it to their sophomore year in college. Now, about half of those, 28%, are for financial reasons. They just can't afford to go to school. And we try to address that to make it more affordable. The other half of those are because the student is in the wrong major, at the wrong school, for all the wrong reasons. And that's a pretty staggering statistic, to think that basically a little bit more than a quarter of students don't make it to their sophomore year in college because they just went to the wrong school. And all the high school college counselors are impacted because of funding issues. So they're not even getting good direction there as to what is a good school, where should they be going, what's a good fit for them. Should they even be attending a four-year college, or would it be better for them to be attending a two-year, community college first? What's the best fit for them? We need to be discussing that. And that is part of the college funding process, is helping them through that. Although that's not really the focus of this particular presentation. It is a lot of the work that I do. So a theme for tonight, to borrow from Apple, is think different. There again are these rules, two sets of rules that are out there. That's certainly one thing you need to pay attention to. And there are a couple of myths that people don't really understand. The first myth is that they can do it themselves with free resources. Now, I know I'm biased in this. I have been in the college funding space for several years. I get paid to do college funding for people. So maybe I'm just trying to steer more people my way. But from what I see, the amount of misinformation that's floating around out there, the fact that there are these two sets of rules, and the fact that I see people make huge mistakes costing them thousands of dollars every year, I just don't see how people can really do it themselves with free resources. You need to have somebody who knows how the game's played in your back pocket that you can refer to. And I have clients with testimonials over and over again who said, you know what? I'm so happy we have you there, because if we had a question, we knew we had an answer, and we had an answer we could trust. As opposed to, if they're flying it by what they can find with free resources, they don't even know if they can trust those resources. And the second myth that's out there is simply that the price tag of the college matters. It doesn't. There are schools, private institutions, that have a cost of attendance of $55,000 a year or more. And there are private or public universities that have cost of attendance of $20,000 a year or less. But in the way the whole equation works for most people, that really doesn't matter. What really matters is how much money are they spending out of pocket each and every year, and how much money is being covered by other resources in the form of free money. And if you're borrowing money and trashing your future because you're going into debt up to your eyeballs in order to pay for college, that really isn't doing something that's in your best interest. And we need people to think in those terms. So the price tag of the college doesn't matter. What I show you there that it does matter is the myth. So let's get into the college funding calculation, because this is the nuts and bolts and the guts of where the money is saved. There are only three terms to have to understand in the college funding calculation. The first one is COA, and that stands for cost of attendance. Cost of attendance includes everything: room and board, obviously the tuition. They give you a travel allowance. It's usually around $1,200, $1,500 a year, and another anywhere from $1,200 to $3,500 for incidental expenses. Books are also included in the cost of attendance. It's everything of the cost of sending a kid to that particular school. And it's always posted on the school's website. It has to be posted there. It's also posted in lots of free resource websites that you can find, like collegesearch.collegeboard.com and others that are all available to you. The second term to pay attention to is EFC, and we'll spend the most time with this one. EFC stands for Expected family contribution. Expected family contribution is calculated from income and assets of both the family members and the students themselves. We'll get into that in a moment. And the last piece of the puzzle is the need, which is pretty simple calculation. You take the cost of attendance at the school and you subtract the expected family contribution, the amount that's expected to be paid by the family towards the school, and you have the calculated need. And we'll get into this in a moment in more detail, but the need does not necessarily mean that the school has to cover it. It just means it's calculated to be the financial need of that particular family to send that student to that school for that year. Expected family contribution has four major factors in how it's calculated. The first one is the family income. So you take the total family income, and the first thing they do is they subtract an allowance for the fact that you pay taxes, because they know if you paid money out in taxes, that money is no longer available to pay for college. So obviously we're not going to count that towards your ability to pay for college. So the family income is subtracted from the family income is subtracted the amount that you paid in taxes, both federal and state. And then after that, they give you what I call the poverty allowance. I don't even remember what the real word for it is now, but we've always called it the poverty allowance around here. It's about $25,000 per year for a married couple with children. And what they understand is that the first $25,000 you make in income after you pay taxes is money that you really need to live on. But after that, 40% of all your income after those allowances goes towards your ability to pay for college. 40%. The other side of it is family assets, and this is where things get a little bit fuzzier because some assets are counted and others are not. If you use the FAFSA form for financial aid, that's the free application for federal student aid. If you use the FAFSA form for financial aid, qualified accounts, retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks, are not counted. They don't even ask that question. If you use the profile form, and there are about 450 schools, and they are all the top-notch, well-known, high-profile schools, hence the name CSS Profile. If you use the CSS Profile application, they do count qualified retirement accounts. They also count annuities, which are not counted by FAFSA. They do not count cash value life insurance in either profile or FAFSA, and it is one of the places where we hide assets. I've hidden millions of dollars of wealth in cash value life policies that have become invisible to the financial aid process. People looked like they were dirt poor even though they had more than enough money to pay for that college because we hid it someplace where it was invisible. So that's the family asset picture, and about 6 to 10% of all of your family assets after allowances, they do give you $50,000 of assets that are counted as an allowance, and then after that, 6 to 10% of all the money that's left over is applied to your ability to pay for college. Then we have student income. Student income is treated differently than the parent's income. There is a very, very low threshold, about $3,500 a year that you're allowed to make as a student before the money that you make is applied to college ability to pay for college. And 50% of student income is considered ability to pay for college after that minimal allowance. And then the student assets is also a separate picture. Student assets, they don't give you any allowances. If it's in the student's name, it starts at 0, and 20% of all student assets are considered capable to be used for college. So if you have a student who's done a really good job, maybe in high school, of saving money, and they've done a great job of maybe working summers, and they're building up, and they've got $10,000 sitting in a savings account that's in their name, that means $2,000 per year, as long as that money's there, will be looked at as ability to pay for college, just because it's in the student's name, as opposed to if it was in the parent's name, it could easily be under the $50,000 parental allowance. So you start to get an idea why I say that the college funding calculation is somewhat complicated, and it can make some people's hair stand on end. This is an extremely complicated process, and I totally understand that it can be very challenging even for planners to get their heads around. And you as students of financial planning may even find this more challenging, maybe not. For me, it was very simple to get my head around quickly. Once I understood the 4 basic elements of the expected family contribution calculation, it was much easier for me to really understand what I could do to help people. And then once I understood that some assets are counted and others are not, and where those allowances are, we could start moving or repositioning wealth in ways that could really create sizable savings for clients as far as paying for college. So I'm going to just take a short break. If you have questions right now, this would be a great time to type them in. We'll move on to, we're going to look at some real numbers with regards to this calculation. And if you have questions, you're welcome to type them in to me, and I will do my best to address them. And I will address them at the end of the presentation as well. So let's go back to this calculation one more time. The cost of attendance, expected family contribution, and need are on the left-hand side. And let's take the case of a public university with an average cost of attendance of $27,000 per year and expected family contribution for the particular family that we're going to talk about. And this is going to be a family that makes about $85,000 per year. So it's above the median average household income, $85,000 per year in income, and no assets really to speak of over the $50,000 limits. So their expected family contribution is calculated to be $15,000. So the need for this particular family is calculated to be $12,000. And I will get to, I see Mark and I'll get to your question in a minute, Mark, with regards to FAFSA. Hold on. So let's look at a separate college. This one is a private institution, because I think I'm going to address Mark's, I may not address this question in this one, but let's get through this point and then I'll address Mark's question. Let's a different college. This is a private university. $52,000 per year is what it costs. Same family though, with a $15,000 expected family contribution, which means the financial need for this particular student is $37,000. See, so it really doesn't matter what the price tag of the college is, as long as the need is being met by someone with free money. We'll get into that in a moment. Their obligation is just that middle number, the expected family contribution, $15,000. That's what they're going to have to come up with based on the calculation. And if the private university can come up with the extra $37,000 in need-based aid, then the family will still only be out of pocket 15 grand. And the piece of this that's important to understand is that this need is not always covered. Just because a student qualifies for need-based aid doesn't mean that the college or university has to give it to them. Some schools, usually private institutions, cover most of the need. Others cover less than half. And the difference between the two is usually the size of the endowment of the school. Private institutions usually have the money. Public universities rarely do. Aid comes as two different types too. There's free money and there's borrowed money, and there's a huge difference. Free money is free money. It's money that's paid back to you, or that you never have to pay back. It's just given to you and that's it. You never see it again. Borrowed money is money that you do have to pay back. Either the student has to pay it back or the parents have to pay it back, or both have to pay it back. And you can't get rid of that borrowed money debt by declaring bankruptcy. You can't get rid of it in any way. You have to pay it back, period. They will find a way to get it back from you someday, unless you die. It's the only way you can stop having to pay back a borrowed loan on college loans, is to die. And there's a huge difference here between free money and borrowed money, because borrowed money essentially means, from a planning standpoint, trashing your family's financial future in order to send your kids to college. So free money comes in a bunch of different formats. One is grants, scholarships, and work study. That's what free money is. Grants, scholarships, and work study. It's not one of those three. It's not free money. And borrowed money is debt. Now, there are loans that we do actually recommend that clients take if they want to, and those are the Stafford subsidized loans. Interest rates on them are low, usually right now below 4%. Interest is paid for you by the government until you are done with school. So basically, they are interest-free loans until such time as you are finished with your schooling process, at which time then you pay it back, and it's a really reasonable interest rate and a competitive one. But most of the other loans that are out there are not subsidized, so the interest starts accruing the minute you start using the dollars, and they're rates that are 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14%. So you have to be very careful about the debt that you're taking on in order to pay for college. All right, I'm going to take a break here, and I'm going to address Mark's question. Does FAFSA consider parent assets of adult children applying for aid? If the adult child is considered to be independent, is no longer being declared as a dependent on the parental asset picture, no. Parental assets should not be considered. The adult student is therefore applying for aid on their own recourse and their own ability. And so therefore the formula changes a little bit for them. They do start getting some allowances because they've got to live. It's even more critical if they are married or have their own children, because then they are obviously parents. They obviously have issues that they have to have money for beyond paying for their own college. So it qualifies them for more financial need and a lower expected family contribution. But you can't just sit there and say, you know what, this is going to be an independent student and we're not going to consider parental assets. The colleges and universities have found that to be an area that's been abused quite a bit. So they're very serious about making sure that the student, the adult student, is truly independent of the parents. And obviously telltale signs would be if a student is showing up on the parents' tax forms, and they might look at that. But in general, students' ability to pay is, if they are truly independent, is their ability to pay, not their parents' ability to come up and cough up money. You're welcome. Let's move on. We're almost done, by the way, with this part. So what are the top mistakes that I see people make? And I've been doing this now, it's probably my 4th year in this space, because I started when my son was a freshman in high school and he's a freshman in college. So in this time, I've seen dozens of cases go across my desk, and I've seen lots of mistakes. And I've seen lots of cases go across my desk that never became clients, lots more than the dozens that I've taken on as clients. And I've seen them make lots of even worse mistakes than that. Top mistakes that I've seen make: confusing price with value. We've really kind of drilled into that one pretty heavily. Just because the school has a $55,000 price tag doesn't mean that it's going to really cost you as a family any more money to go to that school than a public university with a $20,000 cost of attendance. And when you understand that most students who are going to school are not coming from super high income families making $250,000 or more, that's a really big mistake folks are making. They don't even bother sending their kid. Oh, you can't go to a private school because there's no way we can afford it. So they don't even have the kid look at it. And that might be the best fit for that student, in which case you're sending the student to a school where they're far more likely to fail because it's not a good fit for them. And it goes back to that statistic about a quarter of the students dropping out after their freshman year in college because they're in the wrong school for the wrong reasons. Other top mistakes I see people make: 529 accounts. Where I saw a lot of this in 2008. People, now 529 accounts are tax advantaged ways to save for college, and they do have certain benefits to them. And I'm not saying you should never use a 529 account, but you should use it with concern for what it's being used for. And what I saw in 2008 was people striving for greater rates of return, and they got wiped out because they weren't paying attention to the fact that that money in that 529 account was something that they were going to need in the next year. 529 accounts have a tendency to be invested in risky assets at times when they shouldn't be invested in risky assets. There's not enough time frame to make up for losses, serious losses in the account. And yet this is what I see over and over again. And the target date accounts, there's lots of discussion over whether the 2016 target date 529 account is really invested as conservatively as should be required for something that is going to be used and needed to be used in the next 3 or 4 years. So that's my issue with 529 accounts. There are places you can put money that have the same tax advantages and that basically is cash value life insurance. and sometimes annuities, because those are invisible to FAFSA as well. You can hide money in those places. They have the same tax advantages. They're invisible to the process. 529 accounts are counted as parental assets. They are not counted as student assets. They are counted as parental assets. And so there are places you can put the money that I think is better than 529 accounts, but 529 accounts is better than putting it into a regular investment account because then you don't get any of the benefits of the tax advantages. Harry, I'll answer your question in a little bit. Is there any way to transfer funds out of a 529 and into a fixed account in order to prevent the possible downturn in the stock market? Yeah, 529 accounts are usually managed by advisors. So the key is to make sure that if you see something, and if not, 529 accounts can be managed, can be put into more fixed income securities. So the key is, if you're doing a review with a client, if they are a client that you're managing their assets, make sure that you're managing their assets, 529 accounts, with the timetable of whenever the kids are going to college, and not the timetable of, well, we want to get the best returns we can in hopes that we can build up enough money to pay for college, because that's just a scary way to approach it. And if that's not money that you have control over, I would certainly recommend to them that they find a way to move that 529 account into something that is more conservative based on the time window that they have at their disposal. Next mistake I've seen, ignoring school aid history and endowments. Again, schools, private universities have a lot of free money to give away. Public universities basically have none. So what you will get from a public university to fulfill your need is the ability to take loans. That's how they fill in the need. And they don't even fill all of the need with loans. If they qualify for Cal Grant, and Cal Grant income limitation is about $80,000 a year. If the family qualifies for a Cal Grant, that is free money, and it can be sizable. Cal Grants can be up to $10,000, not quite $10,000 a year. So that is significant. Other mistakes, college application questions and answers. There are places that oftentimes the college application, now I understand college applications are supposed to be needs blind, but they still will ask questions like, what do your parents do for vocation? How much money is family income? What kind of money do your parents make? Those are usually optional questions. They have an asterisk next to them. This is on the college application, not on FAFSA. This is on the college application. They'll ask these questions because they're hunting. And they're hunting to see if this person might be a better resource to pay for college. If it's not an optional question, then don't answer it. It doesn't need to be answered, don't answer it. Allow the college and university to live in the needs blind world. Incorrect or fraudulent submissions on FAFSA and CSS profile. Just understand the first year families will probably be audited in spring before attending school. So if you say your taxable income is one thing and your IRS tax 1040 shows something completely different, that's something that's going to get reconciled, and will get reconciled before the student goes to school. So aid can be withdrawn if they find out that you don't really qualify for the aid. So we never recommend people be incorrect or fraudulent in their submissions on FAFSA or CSS profile. We do recommend, however, that you only answer the questions that are asked in those forms, not the questions you'd like to answer. Sometimes people, a lot of times people, put the wrong information, and that's actually, I'll get to that one in a moment because it's coming up in one of the top 3 mistakes. Number 3 mistake, filing errors. Here it is. The first filing error is just too much information. People will put information like retirement assets, qualified retirement account assets, in the investment asset box. That's not the question that they were being asked, but that's the question that they answered. And they accidentally put their $150,000 401k account into the box that says, how much do you have in the way of investment assets? It's a big mistake. And I see it happen way too often, way too often. So you have to be very careful about how you're filing the application, the federal free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA form, which is about 105 questions long. It's not that complicated, but people have a tendency to put way too much information down. And then if you're in profile, just so you understand, the CSS profile application is 700 plus questions. It is the most invasive financial questionnaire ever compiled. It is more invasive than the questionnaire that I give to clients when I'm trying to do main discovery on everything that they have and what's going on in their financial situation. It's terribly invasive. Nobody wants to do CSS profile. We don't even like doing it for our clients. In fact, we charge a sizable sum to do the profile filing for them. Other mistakes on filing errors: putting information in the wrong box, putting Social Security where your birth date's supposed to go, stuff like that. I've seen it done. What it does is it slows down the application for financial aid. When you understand that the financial aid window opens January 1 and it closes on March 2nd, and if you file in mid-January, but you have a bunch of filing errors, so you have to keep refiling the FAFSA until you get them all right, you could start missing out on financial aid that's being doled out in January. The later you file the FAFSA, the less financial aid is available to you, both merit-based and need-based aid, which is a small answer to Harry's question, which I'll get to a little bit in a moment. And then just missing the deadlines. FAFSA can only be filed starting January 1 of the year prior to the student attending that college or university, and it must be filed by March 2nd. That's the deadline. If you miss the March 2nd deadline, you miss out on a lot of free money. And actually, if you are even late in the time window, you start missing out on some money, because some money is doled out earlier in the year, in January and February, not March. Mistake number 2, child assets. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Student finances apply to the expected family contribution differently than family assets do. Remember, if they have an income, if they have a savings account with $10,000, 20% of that is applied to the ability to pay for college with no allowances, none, zero. Much better to take the student assets, put them into a parental account, with the parents giving the student a paper IOU and saying, look, this is your money, it's in our account, but we're at least going to put it there until we're done with paying for college. If you need the money, we'll give it to you, but it's because it's your money, but it's not going to be in your name and account in your name, because that just means we're going to end up paying more for college than we need to. It's a simple solution. And there's also a lower income protection amount for students. It's just something to pay attention to. Students who do a lot of work prior to school. Now, there's an exception here, and that is work study. When a student is doing work study, that income does not account or count towards their allowance for income. And there's a lower income protection amount for students, and there's a higher percentage of it. Remember, it's 40% of parental income, it's 50% of student income after allowances. And we talked about the no asset protection threshold and the 20% contribution. So pay attention to the child's assets and anything that's in the child's name, because that is an important piece of the financial funding, college funding equation. And then the number one mistake that I see people making is not trying. I hear this more often than I hear anything else. It's, we make too much money. There's no reason to apply for financial aid. First off, high income is in the eye of the beholder. A family of 4 with $150,000 in family income qualifies for financial aid, with one student attending a university with a cost of attendance over $30,000 per year. If they have 2 students attending a college or university, they qualify with even $200,000 or more in family income. That's for need-based aid. So aid is available even with a good income. Remember, different colleges fund aid differently. So what you have to pay attention to is, how is the expected family contribution being calculated for that particular college or university? Are they using FAFSA or are they using Profile? And then how much money do they have to give away in the form of free money to whoever needs it? But then there's this last quotient, which is, if you don't file the FAFSA form, you don't get access to any free money, no aid, including merit-based aid. So Harry, the answer to your question, how would your conversation with a client go if you realize that the family will probably not qualify for financial aid? First off, the bar for financial aid qualification is a lot higher than most people think it is. I usually tell people you probably qualify for some need-based aid, even with income of $150,000 or more, and possibly even with $200,000 or more, depending on how many students are attending college at the same time. But let's just say we have a family that has a couple of doctors in it, and they make close to $1 million a year, right? I have a particular case that we did with a couple out of they lived in not Louisiana, they lived in Alabama, and she wanted to attend Georgetown. Nope, she wanted to attend Georgetown, and the parents wanted her to go to Vanderbilt because parents went to Vanderbilt. She got accepted to both because she had great grades and good board scores, and she was an outstanding student, valedictorian in her school, and she had a good education. She got accepted to both. But she wanted to be the next Supreme Court female justice, the next female Supreme Court justice. So what she did, because she got accepted to both of them, was we pitted one against the other. And she was the perfect student for Georgetown. They wanted her because they want the next female Supreme Court justice to be a Georgetown alum. It's just something that they want. And we pitted them against Vanderbilt. And what we ended up getting was about $30,000 in free money from Georgetown, even though the parents made close to $1 million a year in income. That's merit-based aid. And every student, if they make the right presentation to the right college and university, can qualify for merit-based aid. They have to have decent grades. They don't have to have straight A's, but they have to have decent grades. And they do have to have decent board scores usually to get some of that. But if they happen to have, some kind of unique quality that really qualifies them as something that a college or university wants, the college or university will pay for that, and they pay for it in the form of merit-based aid, even if the parents make way too much money. So my answer to the question here is, what do I tell them? I say, if you want to lower the cost of college, then the way to do that is through the college application process, finding the right school that's the right fit for your student, and making sure their college application oozes their unique qualities so that that school can discover that student is the perfect fit for them, and they will buy your student. And they'll buy it with merit-based aid. Do you have examples of schools that require CSS profile? You can do a Google search. Just say CSS profile school, and the system will. There's a PDF, or if you want, I can even send you the PDF of the listing of the 450 schools. If you use search.collegeboard.com, it's a free resource that's available. That also, all those resources tell you whether or not the school requires CSS profile. The college or state university's main webpage will also tell you if they require the CSS profile. It's part of the financial aid process. It is expressed openly that they require it. Just understand that if it's a profile school and they require the profile application, it's a bear to fill out, and they're going to look at every asset that the client has, including qualified retirement accounts. And they're probably going to end up having a higher expected family contribution because it's a profile school. On average, profile schools come back with EFC calculations that are 30 to 40% higher than non-profile schools, on average. That's been our experience. With multiple students in college at the same time, does it matter if one of the students is on a full scholarship? No. The way they do it is they take your expected family contribution and they split it between the number of students attending full-time in school. So if the expected family contribution back in that previous case was $15,000, and yet they had 2 students attending college at the same time, then the expected family contribution would be $7,500 for each student. And if one of the students happened to be already on a full ride because of maybe athletics or merit-based aid or whatever, they don't care. Then the other student still has the only expected family contribution of $7,500. So no, they don't. Now, they may come into play when you file the application as to whether or not you are getting free money and what kind of free money you are getting. And it may kick that $7,500 from one student back over to the other one. It depends on the school, it depends on how they look at it. In general, though, our experience has been no. The advantage of having 2 students in school at the same time is that you split the expected family contribution among the students. I have one client that has triplets, and this is the first time in their lives that they were actually thankful that they had 3 kids who were born at the same time, because now they have 3 students attending college at the same time. And they're all going to really high-end schools. And their expected family contribution per student is at a very reasonable level. I think it ended up being around $4,000 a student. All right, so that's the #1 mistake, and that's it for my presentation. So if you have other questions, I will entertain them now. Does the school consider financial need when awarding academic scholarships? Okay, that's a tough question, because they're supposed to be awarding academic scholarships based on a needs-blind basis. And what happens is, if they're awarding need-based aid, they may back off on the amount of merit-based aid that they are offering. Or better yet, usually what happens is, if they're awarding merit-based aid, they may back off on some of the need-based aid that they're offering. Usually one or the other comes first. Depends on the school and it depends on their methodology. My experience has been, more often than not, they'll award the merit-based aid because the student qualified, and they'll say, well, we covered just about all your need-based aid, and the rest of it we're not going to cover with need-based free money. We're going to do it in the form of loans. Most of the time, that's the way it works. My son is a perfect example of one that didn't work badly against us. He qualified for almost $20,000 in merit-based aid, and then on top of that, still qualified, because I'm pretty good at what I do. We looked dirt poor, and he qualified for another $10,000 to $12,000 in need-based aid on top of the merit-based aid. So he's attending Chapman University this year, and our out-of-pocket is somewhere around $16,000 a year. And cost of attendance there is $54,000. Excuse me a second. How long do assets need to be out of the student and or parents' names to be included on FAFSA? The timetable is, FAFSA is filed on January 1 or so. The assets need to be out of there no later than December 31st of the prior year, because it is possible. And really, you may want to have them out of there by November 30th of the prior year, because it is possible in that audit, which I had mentioned, that you'll be asked for not only your IRS 1040 forms, but bank statements from anywhere from December through June. Which is why we also recommend that if you get a gift from a grandparent or something like that, that gift doesn't show up in your account until probably July. Even though you're going to turn around and give it to the school immediately thereafter, in July or August to pay for school, if it shows up in March and you get audited and it's sitting in that account, it could adversely affect your qualification for financial aid. How did the conversation go with the family that you hid assets in the life insurance policy? That's a great question. So what we show them is, there's a calculator available for free. It's on FinAid, FINAID.org, FinAid.org. And I'll type it in here. And that calculator, we show them their particular position and what they qualify for and how much expected family contribution is at the time, with all their assets the way they are currently placed. And then we say, what if we were to hide certain assets and make them invisible to the process? What would that look like, and what would your expected family contribution be without it? So, for example, the family that we did earlier this year, we moved about $330,000. My recollection is that it lowered their expected family contribution from around $45,000 to around $21,000 per year. And the kid wants to go to Colorado, Boulder, UC Boulder, which is an expensive school to go to. And that made all the difference in the world. At that point, they said, how do we do this? How do we make it happen? So we just pushed the money into two different life contracts. One was a MEC, modified endowment contract, which is used to supply a permanent life policy over a 4-year period. So it's a more efficient way to move the money, and it makes more of the money available in cash value. And they said, well, what about that money? Do we have access to it? And because we're super funding life policies, we're getting the least amount of life insurance possible for the amount that we are, amount of premium that we're paying. Most of the money that lands in that cash value policy is available immediately. And whatever is not available in the first policy is available from the MEC immediately to be withdrawn or used or borrowed against for the purposes of paying for college. And if you're borrowing against a policy to pay for college, you're borrowing at the rate, whatever the interest rate is on the life policy, which is usually between 4 and 5%. And of course, it's not income, so it doesn't show up on FAFSA next year. So you are using technically tax-advantaged money to pay for college without any income results showing up on your FAFSA for the following year. So that was the conversation. We just said, here's what you do if you don't do this, and here's what happens if you do it. And is that something you want to do? And they said, yeah, where do we sign? Let's make this happen, because we don't want that to happen. We don't want to pay $23,000 a year to a college or university that we don't have to pay. Whole life.
John,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I have
Go
one
ahead.
more. Sorry. We actually use UL policies. I do both. I compared them both. My objective is to have the most amount of money available, not only now as to pay for college, but also 10 years and 20 years from now. And for me, with the policies I have available to me, through the companies I have available that I write through, UL seems to work a little bit better, more efficiently for those long-term contracts. And we're using that as a long-term savings vehicle for them for retirement purposes as well, not just for college funding. You're welcome, Jeffrey. And I don't see any more questions. So,
John, I'd like to, if you have a few more moments, I'd like to do a student roundtable and hand the microphone to each of our students in turn. They may have another question or just some final thoughts, maybe some aha moments from this. So, Chris, if I could start with you, I'm going to give you the microphone, and if you would share your thoughts. And remember to engage your mic.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Well, this is so enlightening to me because I am a father of 4 and my oldest is going to college next year. So this has been a great little discussion for me, and probably the most impactful point to me, and I would recommend to every single person who's a planner with parents, is to impress upon them that they can qualify for aid at a much higher income level than what they think. That was amazing to me. The levels of income that you can still qualify for need-based aid.
Right.
Thank you, Chris. And let me. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I think it's really both sides of the equation. They can qualify for more need-based aid than they think they can. And they can, if they approach the process properly, they can also qualify for more merit-based aid too. No matter who they are, what their income level is, there are ways that they can save money on college if they just approach the process differently than the way they've been instructed to approach it by all their friends and family members, which is why they need you, the financial professional, to help them understand that.
Colleen, the microphone is yours.
I have a sister that's a junior in high school, and she's been looking at colleges based on the cost. And I can't wait to go back, call my parents, and say, let's rethink this. Let's move some assets out of all of your names into somebody else's name, and let's get her merit-based aid and need-based aid, because I think she can get both. So this has been extremely eye-opening. I wish I knew all this when I was going to undergrad.
Believe me, I wish I had known this earlier than I learned it. I learned it because my son was in high school, and I knew Dennis Stewart, who's a college funding specialist down in your guys' area. He's down in Thousand Oaks. And I said, Dennis, what do I need to know? I know you do this stuff. What can you share with me? And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll teach you everything I know, and you can do it up in your area. And I wish more people understood this.
Thank you, Colleen. Jeffrey, let me give you the mic, and there you go.
Just like Colleen said, amazing concepts. I wish I would have known this as well. And the only question I have is for John is, where do you go? Where's a good place to go and read about this stuff besides our textbooks that we have? Because this is very applicable for a few of my clients right now, and I would like some more information, resources to read so that I can help them out.
Okay. Again, my mentor, Dennis Stewart, down in Thousand Oaks. He has written a book on this. I think you can get it through his website, which is, I'll put that one up here too. It's EducationalFundingSolutions.com. I also posted up there a URL for the college page from my website at altuswealth.com. You go to that page, and there's a link to a 30-minute video slide presentation. This is very similar to what you just saw today, but it's for the retail client. It's just for people to visually go through, and they don't have to do the free assessment that we offer at the end of it through me, but it would certainly be a good starting place for you to send people to understand and just say, look, you get to the end of it. This is a financial planner that I know up in San Luis Obispo. I'd rather work with you, or whatever, and they can work with you. I'm fine with that. I put that out there as a free resource because for me, again, it's important that everybody understand how the real game is played, and it's 30 minutes long, so it's really eye-opening for most folks to go through it. So I would look for the book at EducationalFundingSolutions.com, and I would go to my website at college.altuswealth.com for the link to the video presentation.
Lauren, the microphone is yours.
Hi, thanks John for the presentation. It was very informative. I've been using FAFSA for a couple of years now. My husband and I are both perpetual students. So it's nice to learn more about how it's calculated. I really had no idea of what all went into it. But I was wondering if you happen to know anything about where a lot of my income right now is coming from veterans programs, aka the GI Bill, and veterans disability. Does that affect my EFC at all? Is that, since it's non-taxable income, am I still reporting it as gross income on there?
Yes, it probably is affecting your expected family contribution, because what they're saying is that it's a source of ability for you to pay. And while it's not exactly the same as what happens when people get income from grandparents that's paid directly to the college or university, what it does is it just raises the bar for that stuff. Because they still expect you with your regular income to come up with a certain amount of money. And then they say, and you got this other money coming from over here, so we're just going to add that to your expected family contribution. And generally speaking, that's the way it works.
Mark, the microphone is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate the presentation here. It makes me wish that I had consulted someone with your expertise before I went to college. Just as a follow-up with that FAFSA, when I first started, I had been working full time, and so I had an income that they would probably look at that EFC and say, yes, he could afford that. But when I started going back to college, my income was cut by more than half. And my rent at the time was more than the income that I was making. And so I had to take just personal loans from my parents. I was living outside of the home, independent on my own, and so when I was doing the FAFSA, they still came up with an EFC saying that I can contribute X amount of dollars, and I didn't see how that was possible. So I was forced to do the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So I didn't know. For FAFSA, to me, it seems like that calculation was just really weird in terms of when they look at rent, when they look at other expenses.
Well, they don't usually look at rent. So I don't know if they did back when you were doing it, but they're not looking at that now. What they're doing is they're giving you this poverty, what I call poverty allowance, and that they figure is going to incorporate the cost of food and rent. And again, it's a minimal amount. It's $25,000 a year. It's a couple $1,000s a month. And if you happen to live in a high rent district, you're kind of going to have to cover it some other way. And this is where I find the whole equation to be really kind of unfair, because if you live in this place, I live up in San Luis Obispo, and I mean, cost of living up here is expensive, and our average family income is closer to $85,000-$90,000 a year. And you tell somebody you still got to come up with 15, 20 grand on 90,000 a year when your mortgage payment's 4 grand a month or 3 grand a month. You go, well, where's the money going to come from? I don't have that kind of money. And yeah, they are forced to go back through the loan process. It's not a perfect system, and it's as good as they've been able to make it. But I think the focus really needs to be on making sure that you are giving, as you're looking as poor as you can look through FAFSA, and if you, like, when you dropped your, so you were working the year before you started school, you were working at one level, and then you started school and your income dropped substantially. You should have gone back and appealed it because of hardship. There's a means by which you can say, look, that was the income I made last year. My base year isn't representative of my income this year, and here's why. And they will actually go and they will amend it. Um, Whether or not the school will come up with more need-based aid is a totally different question, but at least you have a starting point. And that would have been something that would have been useful for you in thinking in that situation.
Mark, you have the microphone back in case there's anything you want to follow up there.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to try to amend it. I don't suppose there's a way to now go after the fact. I mean, this has been.
Yeah. No, not now. See, that's the area where, as financial planners, being cognizant of the whole college funding process and how it works, I think is really important, because you have an ability to share with people as a planner something that's really useful to them and can save them boatloads of money. And you I look at it as it's my obligation now to run around and tell people this stuff. I'm not selling anything. I'm just saying, look, I know stuff that you don't, and if I can save you $5,000, I feel it's my obligation to tell you how to do that.
Nancy, the microphone is yours. Yes, go ahead and type that in. That's certainly, you're not alone, and people have lost their voice lately. Scott, let's try your microphone. I know last week there were some problems, but maybe it'll be working this week. Go ahead, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I really wanted to add what you said makes me realize how little I know about something that seemed very simple. And like you said, there's two sets of rules. I thought I was using the efficient for my unit. But it's something very beneficial, very eye-opening, and lessons going to become very much.
John, I was only able to hear parts of that, and I don't know if you did. Were you able to pick that up? No, so Scott, if you would go ahead and type in,
No,
we
I
still
couldn't.
have
I
that
couldn't.
echo issue from last week, and maybe we can get that resolved this week. Oh yeah, yeah, I know that your mic works, so it's all yours. Well, John, it looks like the last couple people. Oh, yes, he's at work. A couple people are typing in. Why they finished typing in? I do have one
Right.
question for you, or something maybe you could share with the class. You
Yeah.
know, in talking to many of our career changers who are looking to move into financial planning, we talk about the idea of establishing a niche. One of our speakers who came in to my class a couple terms ago had established her niche as someone working with required minimum distributions, and she started becoming known as someone in that area. That worked into helping people, and those people came to her for assets under management. Is that the situation with you in being able to share everything that you do with educational funding and those clients staying with you in asset management, or did your whole career progression kind of evolve where this is just part of what you're offering your clients?
I'd say my career evolved with this being part of it. Because I started financial planning almost 10 years ago, and I had a relatively okay practice um, up
Hello,
until
John.
4 years ago when I was forced to go out on my own. Yeah, you cannot hear me?
We may have lost connection with John,
Can you
unfortunately,
not
and
hear
this
me?
was a wonderful dialogue. And let's see if he, yes. Oh, you can hear him.
I'm
Wonderful.
here.
Just me. Okay, I'll be quiet.
So I was saying, for me, it was just a progression. Now, I will say that as a college funding specialist in this marketplace in San Luis Obispo, it has made all the difference for my practice. My practice has grown demonstrably because of the college funding, especially in the last 2 years, as it's built some traction. And it's been a great introduction for me. I'm working with the kinds of clients that I really like to work with. I like folks who are entrepreneurial and business owners, and in the college funding equation, we have a lot more tools to work with those types of folks. And I like working with the young kids. You know, I coached soccer when my kids were younger, and I like working with that generation and helping them find out who they are and what their strengths are and what their passions are. So for me, it's just been a really good fit. It's not everything that I do. I innovate in a bunch of different areas in the financial planning arena. I would say this is probably, though, now a good third of my practice is doing college funding. And it does introduce me to people in a way that is not as threatening as, oh, you're a financial planner. Well, tell me what the stock market's doing. So, or that kind of
Yes,
thing.
I think he got bounced out, and he might be having, he may not even know that yet.
Well, I can see
Well,
me
this was
and I
wonderful
can see you.
engagement, and I know that you all appreciate him coming just as I do. A wonderful dialogue, and I think that last question to him, and I wanted to, hopefully he'll be able to come back, but I wanted to say to you that oh, you can still hear him. Okay.
Some can, some can't. Is there anybody else that has any other questions for me? I'm here. I said I put the time aside, so I'm happy to chat. Can you all hear me? If you can, I will do Chris's question. Transferring 529 funds to other secure areas. The challenge with transferring them is that once they are in 529 accounts, they can really only be used for qualified educational expenses. So you can't really move them out. So the only thing you can do is make sure that they are properly invested. And that's really what we try to suggest people do at that point. And spend them down as quickly as possible so that maybe other assets which can be used for other purposes or can be redoctored over into or re-hidden in some way, shape, or form can be used in later on in the process. Because once you break up $50,000 in family income or family asset picture, once you break that threshold, then those assets in the 529 account are counting towards your expected family contribution. And then the pluses and minuses of a 529. Pluses are tax deferral, and tax deferral. Minuses are they have a tendency to be misinvested, and there are better. I think there are better vehicles, but they are limited, and you do have to have you do have to either be life licensed and know what you're doing with those vehicles, or have somebody who is life licensed and is not going to abuse the life license and the ability to sell contracts for massive amounts of money, and actually put the money in the most efficient manner, the most efficient vehicle possible. Chris writes, thanks, John. The 529 has been a great option for us over the long term, but we weathered a few downturns. Yes, you have. Multiple states offer 529 plans. Are they restricted to residents of that state? No. So, Chris, I'm not saying 529s are bad. They are better than the alternatives. All the alternatives, with the exception of the fact that they do count as, if you start building substantial assets, if you have a couple $100,000 sitting in a 529 account, it's seriously going to ding your ability, your expected family contribution calculation. And that's just the way it is. And then multiple states do offer 529 plans. Most do not have restrictions to be residents of that state. You can, every 529 plan is different. It really depends on how much control of the assets that you have. I look at it as being something that you need to be conscientious of with each client. In each client's case, it's going to be a little bit different. What I try to do when I'm presenting this 529 versus cash value life policy versus anything else is to say, here's where I see this affecting the picture, and here's where it's affecting your expected family contribution calculation. And then I always leave people the option. As I wrote in a blog article today, I never tell anybody what they have to do. I just give them the tools to make the best choices possible. And in most cases, what the choices that they're making is, we don't want to pay, if we have to pay $20,000 to somebody, we'd rather it not be the college or university. We'd rather it be a slight drag on performance because it's being stuffed into a cash value policy that we can use on and on and on over the rest of our lives. And that's just a decision that they choose to make.
Okay, John. Well, thank you so much for staying in here so long with us. This has been, as you can read from all these student responses, this has been wonderful. It's archived, so I'll be able to share it with the students who had to work this evening and were not able to be here. But your presentation was fabulous. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Harry. It's always my pleasure.
Okay, see you at the board meeting tomorrow of the FPA. And for those of you in the Thousand Oaks area, we have quarterly meetings that you're invited to attend to. You'll see my emails going out, and you'll get to meet John in person. So please try to make one of those in the future. Right, John? They're always great.
They are always great. I drive 220 miles each way to go to those meetings, so they better be good.
And as a student in the program, you come for just $10. So that I was sending it out to you. But thank you, John, and have a good evening.
Take care.